Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone had a great Pride, and the mayor is very, very unhappy with me for doing a Monday morning press conference right after Pride, because we all had a great, amazing time yesterday. Congratulations, Madam Mayor, on a wonderful day. So today we are, with much pride and happiness and excitement, announcing that due to a state law that I authored last year, Senate Bill 423, today, it's a very nice post-Pride gift to San Francisco. Today, San Francisco goes from the longest period of time to get a housing permit in the state of California of all 500 cities to one of the shortest. Yeah. And it will do so by removing housing permitting approvals from the hyper-political mosh pit of San Francisco, where if you follow all the rules around zoning and everything else, that doesn't mean you get a permit. It means that you are now entitled to go into that political mosh pit and fight for a number of years, and maybe you'll get the permit, maybe you won't. No more. Now we're doing something called good government, which means we set the rules ahead of time. This is the zoning, these are the design standards, here are the rules, and if you meet those rules with your project, you get your permit in a matter of months. Yes. No discretionary hearings, no CEQA lawsuits, none of the politics at the Board of Supervisors. You just get your damn permit, period. You know, when we talk about the housing crisis in California, you know, we're here today talking about a lot of technical stuff, about discretionary approvals and ministerial approval and CEQA and zoning and SB with a number after it. It is so important always, always, always when we talk about housing to remember that all of those technical words are really about people and whether people are going to be able to afford housing in San Francisco and in California, about whether people are going to continue to be pushed out of California, middle class and working class families who decide that they can no longer make a run of it here because there is no path for them to get the housing that they need. It's about people at the bottom rung of our economic ladder, low-income renters, who understand that if they lose their apartment, they can't do what normally we expect people to do and what people have always done for all of time. You lose your apartment, you find a different apartment. They understand that they then may have a choice between leaving San Francisco or becoming homeless in San Francisco. It's about people, about young people who want to make their home and their life in San Francisco and do not see a path to be able to do that. These are the young people who are the future of our city, the creativity and the innovation and the energy for the future, and we are pushing them out. So we're going to talk a lot of technical stuff, but it's about people, and that's what SB 423 is about, and that's what today's good news is about. We have spent decades and decades in San Francisco layering process after bureaucracy, after obstacle, after bureaucracy, after process, one after the other for the last 50 years, and have methodically made it hard or impossible to build the number of homes that we need. It's not coincidence that San Francisco is literally, before today, the slowest permitting timeline in the entire state of California. And so over the last 7, 8, 9 years, my colleagues and I, and now 2 governors in a row, we have worked very, very hard to try to plant the seeds to have housing be depoliticized, to have permits happen faster, to change zoning so we're actually zoning for enough new homes, to make it possible to dig ourselves out of the massive, massive shortage that we have dug for ourselves, and we are making progress. There are other issues, some of which are beyond our control. We can't control interest rates, but you know what? When interest rates come down, we need to make sure that our structure that we have empowers the building of many new homes. So specifically, on Friday, the California Department of Housing and Community Development declared that San Francisco is the first city in California to become streamlined under SB 423. You may recall, for those who are following it, I actually included a specific amendment for San Francisco in SB 423 so that it would take effect more quickly in this city and we wouldn't have to wait another couple of years. And the reason I did that is because San Francisco had the slowest permitting timeline. San Francisco was truly at an extreme end and needs extra help to play catch up. We know that this law, the predecessor of this law, Senate Bill 35, which I authored in 2017, was already being used in San Francisco for 100% affordable housing to great effect. This is a successful approach. Thousands of new subsidized affordable homes in San Francisco have been permitted under SB 35 over the past 5 or 6 years in a matter of months. It's been a game changer for subsidized affordable housing in San Francisco. That's about 10% of the new homes in San Francisco. It's great, but it's not enough. And what this bill, what SB 423 coming into effect in our city will do is it will mean instead of 10% of the new homes being subject to this acceleration for permitting, it'll be 75% of new homes. Basically, all new housing, essentially, in San Francisco, other than the mega developments, because those have development agreements that deal with their approvals. I do just want to note that there are some people in San Francisco, and they have become more organized and a little louder these days, and they even have a patron saint in City Hall, the president of the Board of Supervisors, and their goal is to shut down and stop housing production in San Francisco. They do not want, it's classic NIMBYism. They do not want new homes near where they live. They don't want multi-unit apartment buildings anywhere near single-family homes. And I'm here to say that that does not represent the majority view in San Francisco. A large majority of San Franciscans want more housing. A large majority of San Franciscans understand that building new housing doesn't in any way undermine or harm existing neighborhoods. It makes existing neighborhoods better, more vibrant, more diverse, more people to shop at local stores. So that is what this is about, and I'm very, very excited that we are here today. I now want to bring up Mayor Breed, and I want to just say that it's much more fashionable to be a YIMBY now than it was 6 years ago. It was a little tougher then. The politics were harder, and there was a perception that it was a losing political argument. Everyone wants to say they're a YIMBY now, and that's great. Like, welcome. Please join the movement for a brighter housing future. But there are some people who got it early on, and Mayor Breed was one of those people. And I want to remind people that in 2018, I was authoring this big rezoning bill. It was SB 827 that became SB 50. It was like rezoning the whole state. It was a big, big, huge bill, and it had sparked this political fight throughout California. It was being asked, the candidates for governor were being asked about it at every single debate. It was just really infusing throughout political dialogue in California. And right in the middle of that process, we had an unexpected mayor's race in San Francisco because Mayor Lee tragically passed away. And of all the major candidates, every single one of them, except one, came out and opposed our bill. And the only one who came out in favor of it in 2018 was London Breed. And a lot of people told her not to do it. You're going to alienate this constituency or that constituency. And she did it, and she did it with full-throated support, and she won that race. And that spoke volumes about where the people of San Francisco are. So, Mayor Breed, thank you for being willing to take risks on housing and for your amazing leadership for the future of San Francisco. And with that, Mayor London Breed.
Thank you so much, Senator Wiener. It really is great to be here with all of you to talk about housing. And Senator Wiener brings up SB 827. And I remember during that time when I was here in San Francisco, in fact, on the west side of town during a mayor's debate, talking about SB 827. And the question I asked to the people who were there and explaining my support for SB 827 was, how many of you have been in San Francisco your whole life and were born and raised or raised your kids, been here for 50 years or so, and everybody's hand goes up? How many of you raised your children here? My kids were born and raised in San Francisco. Well, how many of your kids still live here? And hardly any hands went up. The public housing that I grew up in, spent over 20 years of my life living there, where my mother actually grew up in this public housing development, had 300 units. They were torn down and only 200 built. The point is, there have been really many mistakes made in the past. And the fact is, all roads lead to housing. If we want to be able to attract and retain city employees who can afford to live in San Francisco, we have to build more housing. If we want construction workers to be able to afford to live in San Francisco, the housing units that they build here, we need to build more housing. When we talk about the folks who work in San Francisco, how do I get talent to stay here? Because it's so expensive to build here. It's all about housing. If we want to get people off the streets, we got to put them somewhere, not just shuffle them from one neighborhood to the next. It all starts with housing. And for decades, this city has said no to housing. They talked about it, but then here comes another policy. Here comes another obstructionist. Here comes another creative two people in the neighborhood to stop a development. And the fact is, we have tried to issue executive directives, make changes here to local laws. We're not giving up. But because of Senator Scott Wiener, we are finally now seeing real opportunities, not just with SB 423, but with SB 35. Already, 3,500 affordable housing units have gone through a process without the obstruction that it has had in the past. And for the first time, I broke ground just last week on 90 new units of affordable housing in the Sunset. For seniors, for families. Enough is enough. San Francisco is not a museum that should be stuck in time. It is a city with actual people and opportunities for people to live here. It will always be a beautiful city. And there is no harm that's going to come to a neighborhood if we build 6 or 8 stories of housing in those neighborhoods, in opportunity sites. No, not redevelopment 2.0 and bulldoze people neighborhood. We're not going backwards. We have to move this city forward. And the way that we do it is we have to get honest about our horrible process here and get the job done. The fact that you can go from years to build units, and in fact, there's a building that is 100%, a little bit over 100 units of affordable housing for families. That took 10 years from the time we identified the property until we went through this ridiculous process. This legislation is a game changer. It is going to stop the obstruction so that we can move housing forward in San Francisco. For the people who are the next generation San Franciscans, for the folks who want to work here and want to live here, for the people who want to raise their kids here. How do we make it affordable? We build more housing. How do we make it affordable? We get out of the way of being obstructionists. And as Senator Wiener, no, we can't control interest rates, but we can control the ridiculous fees and layers of bureaucracy. If I had my way, I'd take all of our city's housing policies, put them in ChatGPT and just type up a few things and spit it out so that we can start from scratch with something that makes sense, that gets it moving. You can't say you want more housing and brag about being a housing leader when you're not willing to take risks to get the job done. And that's what Senator Wiener is doing in Sacramento every single day, and that's what we have to do here locally if we want to make sure that our city employees, our construction workers, kids who are growing up now, we got to think about the future and what that means for San Francisco. And it means build housing now. Thank you, Senator Wiener, for your leadership.
Great. And before I bring up the next speaker, I really want to acknowledge, you can see we have a bunch of carpenters back here, and I really, the NorCal carpenters, we had a lot of fights in Sacramento for a number of years, some of which centered around different labor protections, and it was always not a fight about whether to have labor protections, but what should they be, and it created some paralysis. And then the carpenters showed up and changed everything, and it was a game changer, and they played a critical role in passing SB 423 in such a strong form. And so I want to really thank our brothers and sisters at the Carpenters. So next I want to bring up the guy whose his folks are implementing SB 423, and they've been great partners on so many different issues, the director of the San Francisco Planning Department, Rich Hillis.
Thank you all. Thank you, Mayor Breed and Senator Wiener. We are truly in a new era here at the Planning Department on how we approve projects. So our SB 423 applications are live. Operators are standing by, planners are standing by. You could come in today online and apply for a housing project that will be approved by the end of the summer. And that is truly a game changer, where that would have normally taken a year, 2 years, as Mayor Breed pointed out, sometimes 10 years or more if CEQA is involved and appeals are involved. So between this legislation and then locally the mayor's constraints legislation, which passed, again, we will be able to approve projects in weeks, in months, instead of years. And it truly is, it allows us at planning to focus on the work that planners came to San Francisco or decided to go into the profession to do, instead of project by project refereeing. And in fact, this is how planning works in most cities. It's important for us as staff to work on some of the larger planning issues that we're facing, whether it's climate change and adapting for sea level rise, whether it's reimagining our downtown and filling vacant commercial space into housing, whether it's building a world-class transportation system or rezoning for additional housing in parts of the city that haven't seen a lot of housing. That's really the role of the planning department and what we should be doing. So I want to thank Senator Wiener, Mayor Breed, and the advocates who I know have long been pushing for these changes so we can focus on that work. So thank you very much.
So I next will bring up one after the other, three great housing leaders who helped us critically in getting this and many other pieces of housing legislation passed. We have a really amazing pro-housing YIMBY coalition, and we're winning. So we'll first hear from Brian Hanlon, the Executive Director of California YIMBY, then Laura Foote, the Executive Director of YIMBY Action, and then Corey Smith, the Executive Director of the Housing Action Coalition.
So across California, cities like San Francisco have failed to approve new homes in a timely manner. And these lengthy permitting delays lead to less housing and higher costs. Research has shown that California ranks among the slowest and most expensive states to get permission to build new homes. And as the senator mentioned, San Francisco has historically been the slowest in the entire state. Permitting delays cost a lot of money, and every penny goes into the rent we pay or into the cost of purchasing a new home. While the faster approval process created by SB 423 won't solve all of our housing challenges, it is a major contribution. San Francisco and other cities can now dramatically streamline the permitting of new homes, leading to approvals in months or even faster instead of years. That means more housing, lower cost, and a more affordable California. On behalf of California YIMBY, I want to extend my sincere thanks to Senator Scott Wiener for his strong leadership on housing, including his authorship of SB 423, which we co-sponsored along with our partners and allies at the California Conference of Carpenters. You can see a few of them back here behind me. The California Housing Consortium, LISC, and the Inner City Law Center. Thank you.
All right, back to the short people. Recently, I was at a park with my two little kids, and an older woman sat down next to me, a grandmother, and we got to talking. And she told me that it takes her 2 hours on the bus to commute in from the East Bay, where she had to move because she has some mobility issues and she wasn't able to find an apartment in San Francisco where her kids live, where her grandkids are thriving. But she couldn't find an affordable apartment on a fixed income, and so she's commuting 2 hours on the bus to visit her grandkids and 2 hours back. And if she was able to live in San Francisco, she would be able to babysit the kids, be more present in their lives. And she can't go to a planning commission hearing. She's not going to show up at a meeting where supposedly the voices of San Francisco people who are invested in these projects, where we make these politicized debates about whether we're going to build a housing project or not. She can't participate in that process. But she matters just as much as everyone who has 3 hours to kill on a Thursday afternoon, which is a very specific demographic. This bill allows us to give voice to so many of the voiceless. They matter in our process. They should matter in our goals that we set for meeting these housing goals. I want my kids to be able to live in San Francisco, and the trajectory we've been on, that is not likely. We have to change the game here. And I want to really thank not only Mayor Breed and the planning department. When we make these big laws in Sacramento, it really does matter if your city shows up and says, we want to follow the law. We want to implement these policies. We want to make sure that we meet these housing goals. The planning department taking an active role in saying, how are we going to make sure that we make good on the promises we have made to have a more inclusive San Francisco? How do we use these state laws to hit those state mandatory housing goals that are there for a reason? They are there to give voice to the people who have been excluded from the city, who have been pushed out. Maybe we can stop talking about displacement and do something about it. Bring people back to this community. We cannot be a sanctuary city if you cannot find housing in San Francisco. That is a meaningless commitment if the rent is too damn high. And we have the opportunity today to do that, to make good on our promises and to be a community that welcomes people in instead of one that has a welcome sign on the door and kicks you out as soon as you sat in our parks for 5 minutes. Thank you for coming to Pride. Bye. Back to the East Bay, back to wherever. We don't care because our housing costs are too high. We can't do that anymore. It's bullshit, and we all know it. We need to be a city that welcomes people in. I'm Laura Foote from YIMBY Action, and I want to hand over, thank you, sorry. And we've been fighting this fight. Actually, I do want to tell one more story. When I first got involved in San Francisco politics, I was one of those crazy people who had a full-time dead-end sales job, and I would watch SF.gov TV on my laptop illicitly. My employer did not know this, and I would wait for the moment when I could run the 3 blocks to City Hall to give my public comment. I would tell my boss I was getting a coffee, and I would run over there, I would give public comment, and I would run back. And 9 times out of 10, I was the only person who was a working person who was able to give public comment. I was the youngest person there by a few decades. That is what happens when we have a process that is set up to enable people who have the stability in their lives, who can luxuriate through 3 hours of public comment on a Thursday afternoon. You do not get the working people represented in that process. This process means that we are giving voice to those people. Thank you so much. Corey.
Thank you, Laura. Good morning, everybody. My name is Corey Smith. I'm the Executive Director of the Housing Action Coalition. We represent the builders who are going to be building the homes, the developers, the contractors, the architects, the land use attorneys, the labor unions, who are going to help build California out of this mess. And as the Senator said, we're here for a pretty simple and straightforward reason. San Francisco is not building enough homes, and we're not tracking towards our state-mandated target. And God knows we tried. We attempted continuously. We'll keep doing it. The Board of Supervisors has just thrown up consistent barriers. And fortunately, the state stepped in. And thank you, Senator Wiener, for your help on that. As a resident and as a renter in this city, the two of these people right here represent a path forward in a different direction for not just San Francisco, but for California. And it's really simple. If you follow all of the rules, you should be able to build your building without getting sued by an anti-housing neighbor. I know in layman's terms that seems the totally reasonable and you know, what else could happen? But in San Francisco and in California, that was not the rule until today. And this bill is going to reduce the cost of housing because we are eliminating risk. And as we deal with raising construction costs, figuring out ways to eliminate risk from the process will help more projects pencil and get us to feasibility. And it moves the needle. Speaking of moving the needle, I do want to give an extra shout out here for the Carpenters Union that is up here. Folks probably don't appreciate the shift that happened because of Jay Bradshaw and Pete Rodriguez and the leadership that they have taken in the state of California to stop saying no, and the Carpenters say yes. The Carpenters say yes. Yes to more housing, yes to protecting workers, yes to health insurance, and yes to a better California. Today is a really, really fantastic day. I'm really excited. You'll see these permit boards on the wall here behind you, and right now they're empty. And that's sort of where we are today, right? People are not building housing. But again, today is a new day in California. It's a new day in San Francisco. And I look forward to those boards filling up as we're going to see more housing and more affordable housing come across San Francisco. And we've already got one that's getting underway. So for our next speaker, I do want to introduce a HAC member and a builder from the Bernal Heights Neighborhood Center. Ladies and gentlemen, Gina Dacus.
Good morning. I first want to express my thanks to Senator Scott Wiener and Mayor Breed for inviting me to really a celebration. And as an affordable housing developer, it's an honor to be here and to recognize what SB 423 means to the city and the ability to make affordable housing easier and faster. We have a saying on our housing team that there's no easy housing site left in San Francisco. And so what this means for us, and even building in Bernal Heights, is that some of the challenges of the site, the location, near neighbors' yards and so forth are going to be part of a challenge. And what this bill does, it allows us to do our own contribution to affordable housing. For those of you who may not know, BHNC is an award-winning neighborhood-based service provider and affordable housing developer, and our mission is to preserve and protect affordable housing. And we have 18 development sites, over 500 units, and through these types of bills, SB 35, SB 423, we are now on our way to breaking ground in December for the first time in 10 years in Bernal Heights, followed by another development where we were able to purchase the big lots and convert it into affordable housing for another 70 units. And this is done through these types of bills. This little neighborhood community-based center can do it, and all of our affordable housing sites can do it when we have this type of support. We also are very concerned about our community aging in place. We serve over 1,000 seniors through our programs, and I want to make sure that as our seniors age in place, they don't have to worry about where they're going to lay their head at night. They don't have to worry about where they're going to live or being aged out of or being priced out of the community. And so we want to be able to continue to contribute through our work and through the SB 423, it will allow us to do so. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all of our speakers. That concludes our press conference, and we'll take a few questions.
Gabriel from the San Francisco Standard. You mentioned some other things in the way interest rates. I imagine construction costs are also in there. Are there any other impediments that are standing in your way to more housing like that, and what kind of efforts are being made to address some of them?
Yeah, I mean, obviously interest rates, that's a little bit above our local and state control, and that hopefully will resolve itself and benefit many other things in the economy as well. In terms of, there was an issue which is better now, but still a challenge, with just cost of materials, but that is not as problematic as it was before. The Board of Supervisors and the mayor did lower the inclusionary, which had been set at an infeasible level, and so they reassessed to make sure that it would pencil out and we could deliver those affordable homes and the market rate homes as well. Impact fees are certainly a challenge, especially in San Francisco and some other cities that have very, very high fees that are imposed on projects, which directly increase the cost, and we've been working on that at the state level, and that's something that needs to be addressed. But two of the big issues, zoning for enough new homes, that is being fixed because we changed state law and required cities to zone for more homes, and San Francisco is doing that right now, and then approving homes more quickly, and that's what this is about. So we're not solving everything in one fell swoop. I wish we could, but we're resolving two of the big issues, and then the others will, over time, resolve themselves as well.
Mayor, you started leadership on COVID for the nation. You also started leadership on AI. What do you say to people about San Francisco, the opportunities that were here today should come back and invest in a great opportunity?
Well, I would just say that this legislation provides an opportunity to get to yes and to make it easier. San Francisco has been notorious for saying no, mostly because, as Senator Wiener mentioned, decades of built-up processes have made it really difficult for people to invest in San Francisco and do business here and build housing. And this is an opportunity to get to yes. It's a lot easier, it's a lot user-friendly, and we're really excited about what this could mean for the future.
Max Erickson Caldwell from the Business Times. Does this legislation accomplish the same CEQA exemption that your SB 1227 would?
It's even stronger. So SB 1227, which was a bill that may it rest in peace, it's no longer with us, would have created a temporary CEQA exemption for downtown San Francisco, and we're continuing to take a look at future possibilities for that. SB 423, like some of our other housing laws, is not just an exemption. It literally removes the projects from CEQA entirely. It declares that they're not a project for purpose of CEQA, so it's even stronger than an exemption.
So, as part of the San Francisco housing mandate, San Francisco has to plan or build 82,000 new units in the next 7 years. Is that realistic? Is that feasible?
It is, and we need to have a can-do attitude about it. And so, first of all, we have a large number of homes that have been approved via a development agreement, large projects like Park Merced and the Shipyard and Treasure Island, Schleglock, Mission Rock, Pier 70, et cetera. And that's tens of thousands of new homes. So I'm just speaking for myself here. Some of those development agreements, I believe, need to be revisited because there were a lot of costs put on those projects that make them difficult or even not possible to build. And so we need to make sure that those projects get built, and that takes care of a significant chunk. And then you add in all of these new, project by project in Bernal Heights or in other locations, 70 here, 200 there, 500 there, plus ADUs, plus duplexes. When you add it all together, I think there is a path And even if you don't get to the 82,000, if we get, a lot of it done, that's certainly an improvement to what we've done in the past. So yes, we do have a path.
There need to be more public-private partnerships and more incentives for people to step up.
I mean, we need to, I personally think we need to be open to all of that. I don't know if the mayor wants to add anything.
Yeah, I would just say a couple of things about that, because we are in the process of looking at a lot of the development agreements that exist and trying to understand what will it take for the city to amend in those development agreements to move those projects forward. The other thing is we have a very creative financing tool because of the state. We've been able to invest over $265 million on the front end in order to make sure that Treasure Island continues, that the Petrel Power Station project that's underway continues. So those projects, had it not been for our financing tool, would not be continuing. They would be at a standstill. So it's creative financing, the state, it's semi like redevelopment where you're able to provide money that we're gonna have to pay for, like the utilities, the infrastructure, the undergrounding. We usually, in these development agreements, those costs are a part of these projects, and the city usually has a responsibility, and the developer as well. So reevaluating those agreements, providing financing on the front end, and reducing the responsibility from the development agreements to, in some cases, we've had layers of impact fees for transportations, for jobs. I mean, we, will maintain prevailing wage in these jobs, but there are other investments that they have to give to other organizations and other things that we need to look at whether or not those types of investments should be provided in these projects, because we want them to move forward. In the bigger projects, there will be discussions with community that we can't, there was commitments made to community, so now we're going to reevaluate those commitments made in order, it's like, do you want the housing, or do you want this property to stay, vacant for the next 10, 20 years? So those are the hard discussions that are happening now with a number of these major projects that are underway. So we are in the process of trying to move them forward.
Is there anyone else that has a question before we get back?
Senator, sort of in a similar vein to a question that we just heard earlier, I think that a lot of the development skeptics in the city see SB 423 as setting up San Francisco to fail, and essentially setting the target so high that it was certain that these provisions would kick in. What do you say to those who have that concern?
No. So what happened is we, through a law that I authored 6 years ago, changed how we set housing goals for California. And in the past, because every 8 years, every city gets their housing goals for market rate, moderate income, low income, very low income, and they were absurdly low. Most famously, the city of Beverly Hills in the last cycle received a housing goal for an 8-year period of 3 homes, and other cities got usually wealthier cities got lower numbers, and even San Francisco, our number of 27,000, that's over 8 years. We're a large city. Like that was an absurdly low number. So what we did is we didn't set anyone up for failure. We actually looked at the reality of the situation. How much housing do we actually need? And then those goals were set by looking at the actual facts instead of just a political process where we make up numbers out of thin air. So it's not setting up for failure, it's recognizing the reality. Is that reality a hill that needs to be climbed? Absolutely, because for 50 years, we've made it impossible to build enough new homes. We used to build hundreds of thousands of homes a year in the 1960s. And then in the 70s and 80s, we started downzoning and making it hard to get housing approved and built. And voila, that hundreds of thousands turned into like 70, 80,000 for a much bigger state. So yeah, we're going to have to climb out of this hole, and we're working hard to do that. But again, we need a can-do attitude where we say, let's actually solve the problem and do what it takes, and stop, wringing our hands, which is what we've done too often. So these two, and that'll be it. So.
Yeah, follow-up question for the planning department. If I'm not mistaken, this might open up some time for planning staff, and that might look a little different. Do you have any plan as to where you might direct those additional resources now?
Yeah, like I said, things like the rezoning and looking at a major portion of the city that hasn't seen a lot of development and focusing on our efforts around rezoning, sea level rise, and climate adaptation. We're going through a large process with the Army Corps of Engineers to do a flood study and what the future of our waterfront holds. Transportation planning has often gotten kind of short shrift within the department. And again, focusing on downtown and what the future of downtown, the future of retail looks like in the city. So a host of areas that we can look at in addition to planning for additional housing that we're equipped to do and should be focused on. And it's often a comment we get from commissioners who sit on the planning commission that we spend too much time on DRs or project by project refereeing instead of the larger issues that face the city.
Okay, a final question.
You mentioned public housing, which is one of America's big secrets of opportunity and development. And the development of public housing land mass could open up and create more opportunities, as you have mentioned. So for the residents and the senior disabled community, what does this mean to them?
For the residents in Vernal Heights Neighborhood Center, throughout the city, what does housing mean for them? I think it means security. Annually prior to COVID, our organization puts on an annual Congress, and it is for community members to come in and share what their concerns are. And I will never forget in the housing roundtable, one of the seniors came up to me and said she was living on the couch of a friend and her clothes were in a trash bag. And she asked me, with all of this housing, I just want my dignity back. And so it means dignity. Our elders have worked in this city and have contributed in a variety of ways, and all of the housing matters. But for me, I definitely have a heart for our older adults and making sure that this is not a problem that they inherit and that we can be part of the solution with all of these creative housing solutions like SB 423.